Carrie Davidson, a registered nurse, CPTSD survivor. I have to say it like that because I never get it right. Trauma-informed coach and author of Addicted to Trauma, a memoir of CPTSD, addiction, and taking my life back. Carrie has spent 15 years on her own healing journey after experiencing properly complex trauma, addiction, misdiagnosis, domestic violence, and some incredibly difficult situations and experiences. And today we're going to talk about her story, her CPTSD, and addiction, trauma responses, the nervous system, and what it can actually look like to move from surviving your life to intentionally living it. And nobody understands that better than me, I'm sure. Carrie, thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Wow, you're all the way from North Carolina, right?
Yes, yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So normally I ask one question first, but recently a lot of people have told me it's a really bad question. So I'm going to ask it anyway, and you answer it however you feel that you can. So I like to ask you, who is Carrie Davidson? Whether that was now, whether that's before, whether that's in the future, who to you is Carrie?
Yeah. I kind of describe myself as being like a collage of a human being, in the sense that I have had a lot of different life experience. I think for someone my age, I started in childhood. I was born to an alcoholic parent, so my father was a big drinker when I was a kid, and I was kind of raised by my grandparents who lived next door to me, and they provided a lot of stability for me. But I would go back and forth between my mom's house and my grandparents' house, and my mom's house was not as stable. And so I kind of just I learned a lot of coping mechanisms as a child to kind of navigate two different extreme environments. And then I was in private school until I was 14, and then I switched to public school. So there was a bunch of contrast there.
Mhm.
In the states, the private and public education systems are very
Miles
different.
apart. Yeah.
Yes. hmm Um, and then yeah, college was pretty even keel. And then I moved out to San Diego, California after college, and the culture there was very different than I was used to on the East Coast of the states, and um, yeah, it led me down a path of, I don't know, I would say just self exploration, but also I was, kind of putting myself in dangerous situations as a result of just the soul searching that I really have been doing for my entire life. And so, yeah, when someone asks like, "Who am I?" I would really say I'm a blend of all my life experiences.
Yeah, I get that completely because I'm happy where I am now. Like I'm more happy than I could ever be, I think. But that's because I've been doing self-exploration for the last decade and I finally got there. I've had the worst experiences since childhood, and at the time I was like, "Oh God, why would you do that to me? Why would you put me in that situation?" But it's now at 40 that I see the wisdom in absolutely everything that happens to me, and it's made me who I am. And without them awful experiences, it wouldn't have made me this person. And I'm actually really happy with the person that I've become. So maybe I needed them experiences to be who I was going to be. Do you feel like that resonates with you at all?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, almost word for word. It definitely
Yeah.
resonates with me. Yeah, even some of the darker times that I've experienced, like I was kidnapped in Mexico in 2016, and I've been in abusive relationships and been assaulted by men before, and some of the harder things that we face as women, I think, have really shaped me to have the perspective of life that I do now. And kind of like you said, I'm happy with where I am, and I don't think I would have been able to be forced to grow in the ways that I have, and I
Yeah.
have a certain level of strength now from those experiences that serve me in other ways that are beneficial.
You've survived some incredibly difficult experiences, including domestic violence and narcissistic abuse, and an awful experience where you almost become victim of sex trafficking. If you're
Hmm.
comfortable talking about it, can you take us into that part of your story and ultimately what began the journey to take your life back and what got you away from that?
Yeah, so I was living in San Diego, and the culture out there, especially at the time, was very laissez-faire about smoking weed. And so I was doing that, and I was working at a fitness center. And one of my coworkers, one day we were smoking a joint, and it was Halloween, and he ended up lacing it with a drug. I think it was meth,
Yeah.
but it put me in psychosis. And I kind of had this delusion that two of my friends were in Mexico and needed me to pick them up. And Mexico, from where I was living, was only about 15 minutes from the border of San Diego. So,
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask because, for us that aren't American, it seems like a completely different place, but it's only 15 minutes from you?
uh, from it was in California. Yeah, where
Yeah,
I live now, it's luckily farther away. But at
yeah.
the
But
time,
where you
yeah,
were at the time.
yep, I could get there in 20 minutes and by car. And so I drove down there, and I ended up running out of gas in Tijuana, Mexico. And some background about what was going on in Mexico at that time was the main kind of the head of the cartel at the time was taken down.
Mm.
And so the cartel was then split. And so kind of the underdogs were trying to do things for power. And so in that year alone, the kidnappings, the homicides, and all of the crime rate really went up, in that year in particular.
And
Um,
was you aware of that before you left? But that's
no,
obvious.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Oh my gosh, no, I had no
Oh
idea.
no, but you were in psychosis. So even if you was aware of it, who knows? You might have still gone.
Right, exactly. Yep. Yep. So I run out of gas in Tijuana, and these two like cute young American men. Well, I don't know if they're American, but they looked American.
Mm.
Um, Came up to me and offered to help get me gas. And at the time, I'm like, well, shit. I
What
don't
other
really.
options do you have?
Yep, exactly. And the next thing I know, I'm in the back of their SUV, and I realize that we are driving away from the gas station. And I just remember like this feeling in my chest and stomach being like, oh shit, like,
Were you still quite with it because you just had a joint that had been laced and stuff? Was you still with it, or
um, I I was with it enough to know kind
it
of
wasn't good?
that it wasn't good, but
Yeah,
I did not understand the
you couldn't
extent.
compute it all in your head.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for the next 3 days, I was, basically being driven around to different houses, and they were
Wow.
trying to offer me to different men. And there was one point where once I got in the SUV, they started drugging me. And then I woke up again, and it was nighttime by then, and I was tied to a bed in the back of a house. And I ended up like getting my arm out of the rope that they had me tied with, and I ran, and we were near a beach, so I started running on this beach, and I hid for maybe like 30 minutes, or
Yeah.
I mean, I lost track of time, but it wasn't that long.
Yeah.
And then they captured me again, but
Oh,
the people that captured me again were in police uniform.
okay.
So at that time, I thought, oh, well,
Well, I'm safe.
yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, they've come to help me. And they were not police officers. I mean, they were, I guess, I learned afterwards that the law enforcement and the cartel, they're all wrapped into this,
Yeah.
kind of underground thing. Um, and then yeah, I was basically placed in the back of a house in what felt like a jail cell, where there was no toilet, there was no bed, there was nothing. They were just holding me captive, and I ended up escaping like 3 days later. I ended up basically coming up with the fact that I was pregnant. And
Yeah.
somehow in my like delusional survival
Because
mind,
they'd kept lacing you with drugs all the way through as well, so you still wasn't 100% compos mentis.
not at all, not at all. Yeah, they were, whatever they were drugging me with was supposed to sedate me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that I still had like the meth in my system, I was kind of able to fight it and stay
It
away.
counteracted it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that was like confusing to them because they were like, why is this girl not like falling asleep when we drug her? I was like fighting them. I mean, I
So
was,
they wasn't as careful, so that's why you was able to escape, because they was lulled into a false sense of security, thinking that you should have been more sedated than you was.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And instead, I just like fought them. And it brought out almost like an animalistic side of me, is really the only way I know how to describe it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I ended up basically telling this guy that I was about to have a baby, and my stomach even like expanded to the point where I looked pregnant. And then my next memory after that is waking up in a psych hospital in this room that was all white, and I thought that my name was Grace. So I had like dissociated to the point that I had created a new identity for myself in order to
Yeah.
survive.
Because it was too painful, the one that you'd had before now.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then after
So
that,
had they just let you go and dropped you off to us, or will you never know?
I don't think I'll ever know. I was
Is that
found.
really frustrating? I think there's parts of my story that I don't know the answer to, and I find that frustrating. Have you let go of that now?
I don't know that I've let go of it. So a U.S. Marshal actually found me walking naked past the American border. So he found like
Mm-hmm.
they stripped me of my clothes, whatever clothes I had was wearing at the time, and just dropped me off. And then a marshal found me, and probably like a month ago, I was having struggle with. I was struggling with the fact that I still didn't have all these answers.
Yeah.
And so I
It's
was,
like you search for them in the back of your mind because they're there somewhere. But the more that I try and search for mine, I push them further to the back. Is very frustrating.
yeah, you relate. Yeah, I know. That's exactly.
Mm.
And it's like when I do get a memory, I almost doubt it because I'm like, is my brain creating this? Like,
Making that, yes, 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 yes.
it's so weird. But I thought about requesting the documents because they must have had, official documents that they filled out for the case. And so I reached out to like the US Marshal office and to request it, and they were like, "Oh, the we only keep records up to 7 years, and this was 10 years ago." So like we
Even when it's such a serious thing.
well,
I would understand, parking incidents and traffic incidents, but this is horrific.
yes.
So they never found anyone connected to it.
Mm-mm.
And you just went back home and you was made to get on with your life, basically.
Exactly.
But obviously your life is never the same.
Correct. Yep. Exactly.
When it comes to relationships, was you having awful relationships before this, or did the relationship start after this?
I never really, I think because a healthy relationship was never modeled to me growing
Yeah.
up, like I chose shitty people to date. Objectively, they were just like,
Because your worth was quite low?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
No self-confidence,
Yeah.
no self-worth.
So
I
if someone offers you the most bullshit level of commitment, you're like, oh, thank you so much. I'll be happy to take it, because you don't think you're worth any more than that. And
exactly.
so what you've seen modeled from your parents isn't healthy. So you think, okay.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like high school, I was dating drug dealers, I was hanging out in neighborhoods I shouldn't have been hanging out in. And then, I didn't really start choosing healthier people until my 30s. And even then, being, I'm in probably what the healthiest relationship I've been in now, and the feeling of because there's no drama in it, that
Yeah.
felt unsafe to me. So I would like almost start picking fights based on these patterns that I had.
Yeah. So a lot of people find that either too good to be true, so there must be something inherently wrong, or some people, and it's a very natural thing, it sounds awful, but some people find that too boring. A
Mm-hmm.
normal relationship is too boring when you're used to your nervous system being on edge all the time. So a lot of people find it hard to adapt back to a healthy relationship when they've never had one.
Yes, definitely. I found that to be true, and it's taken me a year to get comfortable and regulate my nervous system and realize that I do feel better being in a predictable relationship that I do, wondering when I'm going to get a phone call from my partner, or wondering if he's cheating on me.
Yeah.
And it's like all
Your
the
nervous system is always on edge. You can never relax, and now you don't have to feel like that. Even though you didn't have to feel like that from the beginning with him, did it take you a long time to trust that?
oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how old was you when the Mexico thing happened, and how much space of time are we talking between them two things,
Yeah.
between them and now?
I was 26. I was 24. So it's been 10 years.
And when you came back from that situation, did you pick your life back up again, or did it go on a more of a downward kill?
Um, it was, I would say it wasn't a linear kind of progression. So
Yeah.
I went to a trauma informed rehab place in Arizona for almost 3 months after it happened. And I learned when I was rescued that my dad had died while I was kidnapped in Mexico. He had
How long was you kidnapped for?
3 days.
So in them 3 days, oh my Lord.
Yeah, so he had a heart attack, and it was a result from the fact that he had been an alcoholic his whole life.
Yeah.
And, at the time, I didn't have a very close relationship with him. And I remember when he died, I almost felt like a sense of relief, because it was like I was just tired of trying to mend a relationship that was never going to be what I hoped that it would be.
Your idea of what it should be.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And so I had a lot to process when I was in Arizona in that place. Um, and
Did
then
anyone know that you were kidnapped? Because you weren't around your parents at the time, you wasn't around your friends. What happened to the guy that gave you the split? We call it a spliff here. I'm not sure what you call it there. But what happened?
I, I mean, literally nothing. I didn't like go to the police about it. I
Yeah.
didn't like get him in trouble. I was just like,
Did
yeah.
he know that you'd gone missing, or he didn't keep a track of you?
Yeah, because I didn't show up to work for the next 2 days. And so they were the ones that ended up like telling my friends what had happened, and they were
Yeah.
like, we think that like something bad happened to her. And then my friend, my mom had been trying to call me for a few days and couldn't get in touch with me, which my mom and I are very close, so that was
That's
abnormal.
unusual. Yeah. Well, she'd been trying to call you because unfortunately your dad passed away.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. And yeah, so she put a missing persons report out,
Hmm.
and she had, law enforcement looking for me, and they ended up finding a video of me like crossing the border. So they knew that I had gone to Mexico. And so
Yeah.
for 2 days, my mom
Oh,
was
okay.
aware that I was in
Yeah.
Mexico, and I don't think she thought that she would ever see me again. And as a
That's
parent, I can
horrific.
only imagine.
That is just horrific. Yeah, as a parent, I just couldn't. I wouldn't even want to imagine. It's horrible.
Hmm.
So, what happened after that? Where was your healing? What started your healing? What started the change in you? You'd gone for bad relationships because of low self-worth. You'd had this horrible experience in Mexico. What did you have an epiphany moment, or was it just lots of little epiphany moments that led you to this big change
Yeah, I
and
think in I think
self-discovery?
in hindsight, I had several big epiphanies, but it was still, I kind of think of it like an onion, where it was like I would peel back one layer and then there was always another layer to keep peeling back.
Yeah.
And so when I got back to North Carolina after Arizona, I started working 3 different jobs in healthcare. And I was working for an alcohol and drug prevention program, which was keeping me sober. And I was kind of in a sober community, which was really helpful.
Mm.
And then I started working in clinical research and eventually decided to go to nursing school.
You was able to hold down a job and everything.
Yeah, somehow. I
Wow,
mean, I think,
that's testament to you. That's amazing.
thank you. Yeah, I think, again, it was probably the way that I was coping, was keeping
Yes.
myself so busy and
Yeah.
not allowing myself to have any downtime to be able to think about what had
Because
happened.
some people would have gone the complete other way and spiraled into drug addiction and etc. The fact that you was able to throw your shit into studying, that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I've always loved school. I've always loved learning, and it's honestly been kind of my drug of choice is like
Mm.
more school. I
Yeah.
somehow think that's gonna like solve all my problems.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely spent more years in school than I have like actually being financially stable, but
Yeah. It's
that's
clearly what you needed at the time, and that's what worked for you, and that's what got you to where you are now. So that is amazing. And you spent years dealing with, I read addiction and being misdiagnosed before understanding what was actually happening. What addiction and misdiagnosis was it, may I ask?
Yeah, I mean, I was diagnosed with everything from depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder.
And this was after that experience.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
did they not put two and two together and think you wasn't inherently like this? It came from the experience.
yeah, right. No, I think the mental health field failed me in many ways.
Yeah.
Um, which is kind of a probably a global issue, but definitely an issue here in the States. I mean,
Mm.
it's just so stigmatized, mental health, and
Do you
the
think there
real
was something? Do you think there was something wrong before all of this happened with your health? Or do you think that if this hadn't happened, your life would have been normal? Yes, you were susceptible to bad relationships and you hadn't had healthy relationships modeled, but do you feel like you would have had this level of CPTSD if it wasn't for the situation in Mexico?
I don't think I would have had this level of it,
Yeah.
where I have experienced like emotional flashbacks, which is a big thing with complex PTSD. That's a little bit different than regular PTSD,
Mm.
where, with regular PTSD, people will have like very visual, visceral flashbacks. For me, it's like my nervous system is reminded of something, and then the emotions that I felt with that situation come
That's
back.
what floods back.
Yeah. And then I start attaching those emotions to a current situation.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Um,
So did you ever get the label, the misdiagnosis? Did you ever prove that not right?
Yeah, very recently only though. So CPTSD is not in the diagnostic manual that psychiatrists use, which
Yeah.
is, I mean,
Crazy.
bullshit. Yeah, because it's what so many people are dealing with.
Hmm.
Um, but I ended up finding a very holistic um, psychiatrist who was like, I don't think that you are bipolar. You're not responding to bipolar medication. You're not, I don't see it.
Yeah.
And then I found a book by Pete Walker called CPTSD. And I remember reading it and I was just like crying every chapter because I was
You
reading.
finally felt validated.
Yes, yes. I was like, this has been my life experience since I was a little girl.
Mm.
And I felt seen for the first time.
Yeah, I understand that.
Hmm.
So after you read the book, did you go to people and say, this, it's clearly this, it's not bipolar?
Hmm. Yes, and at the time, I had gone through nursing school. I was a nurse, and so I had had the education at that point to be able to back up what I was saying. I had studied neuroscience, I had studied mental health, and I was just like, went to my previous providers and was like, you guys are just wrong. Like, I have CPTSD. I know I do. Um, and they finally started listening to me and validating that.
So did they remove the label and validate what you're saying now?
They did. Yeah.
That's good,
Yeah.
because misdiagnosis is such a thing in so many areas, and it causes people so many problems, and it causes them to misunderstand themselves, which is the hardest thing about it. And when you find something validating, like when you read that book and you were crying, that's a huge pivotal moment for you. And a lot of people experience that with ADHD and autism as well.
Yeah.
So we grow up our whole life feeling like there's something wrong with us. And then when we finally find out the answer, it's like the most validating thing on earth. There isn't something wrong with us. So yes, I understand that completely. I know you said the difference between CPTSD. I always get this wrong. And I have a diagnosis of it myself, and I can never get it right. CPTSD, the difference between that and PTSD is the more of the, what main differences would you describe? So what if someone thinks that they have CPTSD as opposed to PTSD, what would you feel like the main differences are?
Yeah. So I think as someone, because I have both because of
Yeah.
the kind of physical stuff. Like one thing that they tried to do to me when I was in Mexico was put me in a barrel and light me on fire. And so every time I get overheated,
Yeah.
I will have like a very bad panic attack. So I keep my house very cool. Um, I don't sit out in the sun for hours because
Because
that's
it can bring a back that feeling.
So I would say the main difference is that, like, for example, if a war veteran hears a loud noise that reminds them of a gunshot. Like, I saw someone in a store a few weeks ago and someone dropped like a can, and this man freaked out because of the noise, and it did sound kind of like a gunshot, but that was very evident to me that he had PTSD and he kind of had that flashback. And so, similarly, both are reliving the experience, but I think with CPTSD, it's more unconscious. It
Yeah.
feels very real. So it's like it's not like the actual thing is happening again. It's the nervous system and the emotions are what get triggered versus like the tactile senses, I guess, if you will. Um, and and that for me shows up and has shown up for me in relationships in the sense that, if my partner tells me that they're going out with friends or they, are talking to their ex girlfriend or something, I will have such an emotional flashback to being cheated on.
Even in a healthy situation.
Even in a healthy situation,
Yeah.
I have
I'm
to catch myself and train myself to be like, Carrie, this is not the same situation. This is not the same person. You are not in that time anymore. Like, we are not there. And I literally have to like talk myself away from a almost a ledge of.
Do you think you'll always have that reaction and you'll have to talk yourself down? Or do you think one day these things will happen and you won't have to talk yourself down? Or do you think that that is always in your destiny?
That's a really good question. And I think it's something that I wonder a lot, but I don't know. I would like to think that, with neuroplasticity and being able to retrain our brain and, you know, kind of reprogram our brain almost, that I hope that there's a day that that's not my first reaction.
Yeah.
But I would definitely be lying if I said I was there now. It's still,
But
I
you've
get,
come far from where you were.
yes, and I get there a lot faster. So I can recognize in the moment what's happening. Whereas 2 years
Before
ago, I
maybe
couldn't.
logic went out the window and you couldn't recognize the difference.
Exactly.
Yeah. Your memoir's called Addicted to Trauma, which is such a powerful title. For me, as soon as I read that, I got that. I fortunately think a lot of people won't, which is great for them. What made you name it Addicted to Trauma, and what's the meaning behind it for you?
Yeah, good question. A lot of people ask me this, and so I've definitely had to really like think about it because the book, I started writing it about 10 years ago. So I actually started it with journals that I was writing when I was in rehab after Mexico.
Hmm.
And I have been diagnosed with mild autism and ADHD even before Mexico.
Oh, okay.
And so that's kind of been a lifelong struggle for me, but I kind of use it as my superpower, but I would say I've always had like a lot of passion. I've always been really highly
Hyper
emotional,
focus.
hyper focus. And so for a lot of my life, people have called me dramatic. They've been, they're like, you're addicted to the drama, like you just love, whatever drama.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about titling the book Addicted to Drama because I wanted there to be some kind of play on words with addiction, but also the patterns. And so for a while, I was like, okay, addicted to drama. And then when I got towards writing the end of the book, I was like, but my book is all about trauma. And so I was like, okay, addicted to trauma because they rhyme. And so the way I designed the cover was I have addicted to drama crossed out and then trauma written underneath to
Yeah.
kind of give people that like visual. So that was how it came to be.
Do you feel like it's fair to say you was addicted to drama? I think you, from what, and I don't know you well, but from what I hear, you knew nothing but trauma. Trauma was your life. So it's not like you came from this stable family and then you were like, wow, that's exciting. You
Mm-hmm.
were just addicted to normality. That's what kept you level. That's what felt normal to you. That's what made you feel validated. So it's not like you came from this great family, a wholesome vibe, and then all of a sudden you love the trauma. I think it's very different. So do you feel like it is possible to be addicted to trauma? And do you think similar reasons?
I do. I think that, our nervous system can get, our brains and nervous system like predictability. And so I think that it's possible to get so conditioned to being in a state of unregulation that it does almost become an addiction. Um, and I was addicted to love for a long time. I've been addicted to you know adrenaline. There's just so many different ways that, and I have an addictive personality,
Yeah.
but I also think that behaviors can be very addicting. And I think that for a long time I was so used to experiencing trauma that that's what I kind of like I it was like a magnet. Like I couldn't seem to escape it. I just once I had, my first sexual assault at 14, it was like I just I kept experiencing other micro traumas
I
until
think it's the more trauma you go through, you attract more traumatized people as well. And
that.
them traumatized people aren't, unfortunately, and I'm traumatized, we're not the healthiest people until we've done the self work. So the more you're not going to attract them healthy people being a traumatized person. So unfortunately, the more trauma you have, the deeper you go into it, because you can't unfortunately attract healthy people because they're like, she's a hot mess, let's stay away from her. And granted, I would have stayed away from where, if my daughter met a girl that was like me, I would be like, stay well away. You're a healthy adjusted person and this person isn't. So I think you had no choice at some times to be dragged into the trauma because there was no one to drag you out. And sometimes people that have experienced trauma, say for example their parents arguing, fighting, domestic violence when they was a kid, sometimes they find it hard to go to sleep without that arguing downstairs when they're older. And it sounds almost perverted or twisted, like, what, did you enjoy it? But it's just this natural instinct and safety blanket. So I completely understand that.
Yeah, that's really I hadn't thought about it in that perspective before, but I completely agree with you that I mean it's right. It's like kind of law of attraction. We're gonna attract people that are like us, and
Yeah.
I definitely navigated to people that were unhealthy as a result of my trauma. So
And the fact that you've been diagnosed with autism and ADHD, that could explain some of your parents' addictive or unhealthy behaviors if they was undiagnosed,
definitely,
because
definitely,
they're at the age range where they wouldn't have had a diagnosis generally. And dealing with undiagnosed neurodivergence, it's horrific. You don't know what's wrong with you. So these problems with your parents could have been spurred on by these things too.
absolutely, yeah. My mom is definitely a little on the spectrum.
Yeah.
We'll say. but she overcompensates and by being a workaholic, and she's got OCD, so she's had an eating disorder my whole life, and she's really particular about food and
Yeah.
different things like that. So yeah, I never learned healthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah. And it's sad, but I think a lot of us didn't, and I hope that changes for our children now. Even I'd say I've got two batches of children. So I have my first batch. I still have them all with me, luckily. I have
Good.
my first batch. They're in their 20s, and I have one that's 9. When I had my first batch, I was young. I didn't know what neurodivergence was, and I didn't cope with life. I was probably more like your mother. Now, with my 9-year-old, I've learned all of them lessons, and I know what neurodivergence is, and I know how to put a positive spin on it. But it's a learning curve. And I think in the day when we were younger, people didn't know what to do with that, and they didn't have coping mechanisms. So some people turn to alcohol, some people to eating disorders. I think it's just really unfortunate of the time that we were living in. We're like a lost generation that's been affected by so much trauma because of our parents. But it's not that it's not their fault, because it was my fault at times. That I could have done a lot better for my children, but we just didn't know ourselves. It was a very different time. I
Absolutely.
think knowledge is power, and we have knowledge now, or we have the means to find knowledge. Then it was such a taboo thing, you just swept it under the carpet and got on with it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep. Especially like being raised by my grandparents who, were experienced the Great Depression, and my grandfather was in World War II, and he just his attitude was you pull yourself up by the bootstraps and you get on with it.
Yeah,
And that's definitely how I was raised.
yeah, I understand that. Most people have heard of fight or flight, but you talk about the 5F responses.
Yes, yes. I do. I talk a lot about that in my work with, everyone responds to trauma differently, and a
Hmm.
lot of people have heard of the fight or flight in terms of what our nervous system does, but I think what's not talked about often is the flee and the fawn response. And for
For
me, I'm
anyone that doesn't know fight or flight, can you just sum up very quickly?
Sure, yeah. So, if our nervous systems are exposed to what it identifies as a threat, there's kind of two things that will happen. We either will fight and, try to protect ourselves against that threat, or we will just completely like freeze and not do anything.
Yeah.
And it's two extremes, and I think just what people everyone's kind of wired differently in terms of that. And um, I definitely identify more with the fight. I'm a more reactive person. But I have a sister who, is more of a flight.
Mm.
She takes off, she turns the other way. Um, and so even though we've experienced the same situation, the way that we
Yeah.
respond to it is different.
Yeah, I have sisters. We were raised in the same house with the same parents, and we couldn't be more different in our reaction to things. As I got older, I my self-worth was so low, and I attracted relationships like my mother and father had, where the woman was very much, a traditional woman, and the dad was it was very old-fashioned but very old unhealthy situation. And my sisters went totally against that. We both had the same experiences exactly, but we've both gone in different directions. So the other F's, are they alternatives to them directions?
Yes, there's a bit of overlap, but yes, they are different. So, like there's freeze, and fawn and flee,
Yeah,
and flee and flight are similar.
that's what I
Um,
was going to.
Yeah, those are very similar. But it's like, I would say fawn is kind of one that people don't hear about a lot. And that one is interesting because it is masked in very like ways that people think looks like high functioning. And
Yeah.
so like, we'll say like, oh, they're a very high functioning person with autism or a high functioning person with neurodivergence. It's kind of the
It's a
same
mask.
way. It's a mask, exactly.
Hmm.
And so I have a bit of the fawn response in me too, which is like why I turn to school for stuff is like when I'm feeling a sense of productivity and accomplishment, then I will literally get addicted. I'll work like 15 hours a day. It's just like almost that extreme to where I just throw myself into something that makes me feel like I'm accomplishing it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like people pleasing with the fawn response. And I think when I was younger, part of the reason that I was so lost is because I really was I was trying to people please. I was trying to make everyone around me happy, thinking that if everyone around me was happy, then I would be happy too.
So is everybody relative, whether they've got, dependent upon whether they've got trauma or no trauma, does everybody have a fight, flight, flee, fawn? Does everybody have one of them?
Yes, yeah.
And is it healthy to recognize which one you are and why that is? Because I think it's very healthy. I've done self-work, like much self-work. And before that, I would be like, why would it be helpful to know if you are flight, or, but now I feel that that is so important because you can trace back where that actually stems from. And until you trace back to what the actual issue is, you can't resolve it. So I think that these are really important for self-discovery. So do you think that it's also important to know what reaction you have, whether you
I
are
do.
fawn or whether you are, yeah.
I do. It's kind of like learning what love languages we have. If you've heard of like the five love
Yeah.
languages, um, it's information about ourselves that I think can be really beneficial to have that insight.
Is it changeable?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think so.
Have you met or have you changed from one to the other? Or is there one that you would rather actively be? Is one better than the other?
I don't know that one is better than the other. I think that
Are
they
well-adjusted individuals that have gone through not as much trauma, are they one specific F?
I think they tend to be more of the fawn or kind of the flight people. The
Mm.
ones that have gone through a lot, I see more of the fight in them, where that's kind of the more automated response. But now that I understand my responses, um, I can't say that I would necessarily want to change them because I've been able to recognize like the purpose that they're trying to serve for me.
Mm. Sometimes I find it really interesting that somebody can desperately want to change their life and still feel completely unable to do it. Do you feel like there was many years when you wanted to change and you just had to be at that point to allow it to happen? Or do you think that the change was down to meeting your current partner and realizing what a healthy situation was? What caused that change, or being surrounded by healthier people? Because you'd gone through so much and you were in a bad place, but what has got you out of it?
Yeah, definitely surrounding myself with different types of people and healthier people has been probably the number one thing that has really helped. I mean, I truly believe that we're the average of the five people that we surround ourselves with.
Yeah.
And so I try to surround myself with people that are, you know, smarter than me, you know, have been through things, that have learned lessons that they can teach me, that, you know, have experienced life in a way that I haven't, and really people that I can just learn from um,
Mm.
in a healthy way. And I think the other component to that has been the self work that I've done on myself in terms of like shadow work and IFS, inner family systems parts work.
A lot of people say with them ones, inner child work.
Yes, inner child work, exactly. Yeah, kind of going back for our younger selves and being the parent that we didn't have, I think
Yeah.
was really helpful for me. And I think as a result of the work that I put into myself, it allowed me to develop a newfound self confidence where I was able to see my self worth. And then it just became law of attraction in that way, where really awesome people were just kind of navigated towards me. And because I was healing, I was attracting people who are all also healing.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and
how do you improve someone's self-worth? So I feel like my self-worth is very different to what it was 10 years ago, 100 million%. But I still meet people, specifically neurodivergent people, and their self-worth is so low, and sometimes they're the most beautiful, kindest people. And I just don't understand why their self-worth is so low. And I just want to shake them, but you can't. They have to get to that point themselves. Is there a way to teach someone how to have self-worth, or is it just allowing them to get to that point? Does everyone have to go through that horrific part and then just need to get to that point themselves, or is there something that you can do?
I I am a believer that we can get there through creation. So I came up with a method that I kind of did with myself, and it's
Mm-hmm.
called the conscious creation method. And it's a 5 step kind of framework that I use in myself, that I use with the people that I work with. And so it starts with recognizing the pattern, and then eventually interrupting the pattern,
Do
and
you
then
have to recognize the pattern first?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So recognizing the pattern, then interrupting the pattern. Can you give me an example, just for anyone listening? Can you give me an example of someone? It doesn't have to be a real person. You can make them up. But Amanda comes to you, for example. What's happened to Amanda, and then what can she do?
Yeah, um so we'll say Amanda is having trouble in her marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and she has young children, and when her husband comes home from a stressful day of work, like, she asked him to help with the children, and he would rather, you know, go play golf or go do something else than help. And
Yeah.
her programmed response is to get mad at him, to yell at him, to blame him not for not being a good father,
Because
or
it's bloody frustrating, poor Amanda. But yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. So frustrating. Like, hello,
yeah.
this is our
I've been
child
working
here.
harder. Yeah,
Yeah, like, I've been working too. Exactly.
yeah,
Um, and so, but instead of coming at him like that, she tries to approach him with curiosity and say, well, what happened during your day that you don't have the capacity to be there for our child right now? And
hmm.
instead of coming at it from an accusatory point of view, she finds ways to compromise and say, well, how can we, you know, kind of create new energy together?
Which is all well and good if
Mm-hmm.
her husband is a predominantly healthy person. So to find yourself in that situation, I would say for it to gone on that long till you've had children and him be like that, your self-worth must be pretty low. Which makes me think that I don't know if it would work in that situation, because for him to be that awful, he would probably be the type that says, fuck off, I'm going out anyway.
Exactly.
You done this. See, you're always making me feel bad. And
Yep.
then storm out and turn it around and gaslight. So I'm thinking that would work only if you're predominantly with somebody that you can talk to and work it out.
Agreed. But I think the difference comes back to the self-confidence, and when we react to people from a place that's not our best self, then we kind of blame ourselves, and that is what erodes our self-confidence, because we're like, oh, well, we didn't handle that the way that we wanted to handle it either. And for me, at least, that erodes my self-confidence. Whereas even if someone is unhealthy and doesn't respond in the way that I want them to, if I know that I treated them with
you
love
gave them your best shot
and I showed up as my best self, then that creates self-worth for me, and then I have the confidence to walk away from that relationship if I'm now at the point that I realize it's not serving me.
So the second one is to interrupt it. What's the third one?
So actually so it goes notice, or it goes, yeah, notice and then understand. So it's like we can notice it, but then the second part is to understand its origin. Third would be interrupt, and then the fourth is the creation aspect. And creation for people can show up differently.
Yeah.
Sometimes people like to cook. They enjoy cooking a meal for their family. For me, I really like to do art. So I paint a lot. I draw a lot. I write poetry. And just the act of kind of starting with a blank canvas or a blank page, for example, or, an empty plate, if we're using the food metaphor. There's something about creating something from nothing that I think inherently creates self-worth for human beings.
And are we at number 5?
Yeah,
No.
so the fifth one is to sustain and build.
Yeah.
So we're looking back and taking kind of those first 4 steps and saying, okay, now how can we move forward? How can we, now that we're unstuck, how do we grow? How do we move forward? How do we build and, continue to get momentum going for a life that we feel like we want to be a part of?
Do you feel like it's possible for everyone that doesn't have self-confidence to be able to gain it at some point?
I think if they
Can
want
put in the work.
Yeah, I think if they want to, are willing to show up for themselves in a way that they've never showed up for themselves, then I do think so.
Because it's hard when you're in that cycle to keep attracting the same thing, and sometimes you have to completely leave that cycle before you can understand your self-worth, and leaving that cycle is sometimes the hardest part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you do now? So are you still nursing, or where are you at now?
Yeah, I'm still doing nursing part-time.
Yeah.
I work on a oncology floor, and then I also have my own coaching business, and I work with people who are overcoming complex trauma.
Yeah. And you use the framework? What other kind of methods do you use as well? Is there a specific method that you use?
I do. I usually use the conscious creation method,
Yeah.
just because I feel like it's really made such a difference for people. But I also kind of customize programs and I build programs based on where people are and what they need. Some people, we do attachment style work,
Yeah.
or we do kind of inner child work or shadow work or detachment work. I do use multiple modalities and kind of pull in my nursing background with.
That's because you've got really unique perspective, because you're both a registered nurse and somebody that's lived with the experience of CPTSD, which is so rare, because some people with CPTSD can't get themselves out of the hole to do that. So you're not so lucky to have both perspectives, but it's amazing that someone's able to work with you and you can see from both sides of the coin.
Yes.
If I was going to see a coach or a doctor or a therapist and they were someone that hadn't experienced trauma and didn't know what a lived experience of CPTSD, I would not as respect as much what they were saying. But it's hard to find nurses or therapists or coaches with experience of lived CPTSD, because it's hard to live with that.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah. I would understand if they didn't ever want to do anything again. You're lucky to be able to leave the house again if you have CPTSD. So it is a rare thing to find someone that has that lived experience and is able to hold it down and help others.
I agree. Absolutely. Yeah.
But where can we find you? If someone really relates to your story or wants to read more about you, is there a book in you? You told me you was doing a documentary. Talk to me. Where can we find you? Is your best platform Facebook, Instagram? If you got a website?
Probably my website or Instagram. Yeah, my website is carriepdavidson.com. I spell my name Carrie. And then my Instagram handle is at Carrie P. Davidson. And my Addicted to Trauma memoir is now available for pre-order on Amazon. And so people can find the book there if they want to hear my story.
And for somebody listening who feels completely stuck in survival mode right now, is there any advice that you can give them or any final words?
Yeah, I would say think about the times in their lives that they lost track of time and were experiencing that kind of flow state, the feeling of joy, and ask themselves, what were they doing when they were experiencing that? Because I find that the activities where we lose track of time because we're just in that flow state, that's when we're in alignment with kind of what we came here to do.
Like the creation.
The creation.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I would keep doing more of that, because I think that's when spirit comes into us and, really gives us information.
Carrie, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your story. And when anyone's had such a traumatic story like that, I hate asking, but I know for you that it means so much for you to be that lighthouse in a storm for other people. And I think that's why I share my story too. Everyone says, oh, do you want to share your story of sexual abuse and domestic violence? But actually, it might as well help someone. So I'm so glad that you're out there shining a light, especially when it comes to having lived experience and now being to pass that on, because it's a rare thing. So I thank you so much, because I think conversations like this are so important, because there are people who spend years believing that there's something wrong with them and they never understand how much of what they're experiencing may be connected to trauma and survival. And now big buzzword, nervous system, which was never a massive buzzword before, but I feel like our generation are learning so much about it. I think if I asked my mum like 20 years ago, what's the nervous system? She'd be like, huh? But now nervous system is like my echo chamber on the internet. So honestly, I thank you so much. And I will share all of your links. Is there anything I've missed out? I have ADHD. I could have missed out some vital things, but have I covered everything?
No, I think so. Yeah. And I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I appreciate everything that you're doing as well.
Thank you so much. I'm going to say thank you to my guests and then stay there. Thank you. Thanks, guests.